Hey, welcome back to day 6 of our 7-day cybersecurity bootcamp. Today we're going to cover the data security, or as most of you probably refer to it as, backup and disaster recovery. Backup today is much more than it used to be. It used to be a system that you would back up to tape or to an external hard drive, and you'd put that system somewhere in a safe or on top of your server. And if someone was to ever delete a file, or if your server was to have a hardware problem and crash, you could go back to these tapes and hopefully restore your data. Well, that system has been improved tremendously in the last few years. There's no longer typically tapes involved or external hard drives. Your backup system today typically will be an image-based backup. It goes to a local storage device. That device can become your server in the case if you have a crash. And then you can also restore individual files. But there's a critical, we feel the backup disaster recovery system should be part of your security system, not your IT infrastructure, and I'll explain that in just a minute. Before we go any further, let's review what we covered yesterday. Yesterday was a firewall coverage. We talked about keeping your firewall rules simple and easy to understand. If you have to take too much time to explain them, then they won't be efficient for you and be also easier to make a mistake. You want to make sure any change made to your firewall is first approved by a committee, so they understand the implications of the changes, and you document all those changes. And you treat the documentation of your changes as secure company data, and you don't delete that. You store it with your sensitive documents. You want to change the passwords often, and you want to create complex passwords for these firewalls. And you also want to update the firmware and all services on your firewall on a regular basis so you don't happen to be vulnerable in case there's a weakness on your device. Most enterprise-level firewalls today include a UTM, a Unified Threat Management System, which includes services like spam filtering, virus filtering, content filtering. You want to enable those services so that you have an extra layer of defense in front of your endpoint protection. We also want to test that thoroughly from outside, do some attacks against your own network. You can actually outsource that to somebody like Network Computer Solutions, and we can test that to find out if all the ports are closed and that something wasn't left open unintentionally. One of the last things you want to consider is maybe outsourcing your firewall management to a managed security services company like Network Computer Solutions so that we can separate your IT staff from the firewall so you can make sure that all your systems are protected thoroughly and someone didn't possibly open up access to themselves so they could attack your data from outside or once they leave the company. It's always a good idea to have an outside company look at your rules and look at your firewall and be aware of all changes before they take place. My name is Mark Marley. I'm the CEO of Network Computer Solutions in Warsaw, Indiana, and I'm going to be leading you through the next series on this course, which revolves around data security and backup disaster recovery. Backup has never been considered a critical element in your IT security system. Backup was always a separate infrastructure element that was managed by the IT department, not by the security team. It was used to recover files in case of a hardware crash or simply the deleted file by a user. Today, the backup disaster recovery system is your final line of defense in the war against ransomware. With the threat landscape as high as it is today and constantly changing, you need to be able to have a system that you can restore from, that you're confident that files backed up on that system are not infected as well. One of the things you got to be concerned about is that in the event that you do have a ransomware attack and your files get encrypted, you only have a few options at that point, and time is sensitive. Normally the ransomware attacks, they give you a fee to restore your files, to unencrypt them, and if you don't respond in a certain amount of time, the price goes up, and also the availability to unencrypt your files will go away, and you may lose your data. You want to make sure that with data security, I'm referring to the ability of your backup system to detect ransomware during the backup process and quarantine that data and block it from infecting the rest of your data on your backup device. This process assures that you have a clean backup to restore in case of a virus or ransomware attack. You should also have the option of restoring files and never have to pay the ransom for your files. The worst thing can really happen would be if you get infected with ransomware and you go to other types of backup systems, such as a file-based backup, normally those will be infected as well. So you want to be very careful and really document the process thoroughly for your disaster recovery process. When you're making your data security plan, you also want to make sure you don't overlook anything. All systems that you own or all systems using your network or store your company data need to be included in the backup planning process. This can include Windows PCs and servers, cloud files, cloud servers, your tablets, your Apple, your iOS, Android, and Chrome apps and documents as well. If you're not careful, your employees can store data in some locations that you're not totally aware of, and if you were to get ransomware attacks, those areas could be attacked just as easily as your Windows PCs. So make sure you ask the right questions, put the right systems in place to make sure all your data is backed up properly.